Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The City of Gearzoo. A team of archaeologists have unearthed the remains of an ancient Sumerian palace. And not just that, but a temple as well in the lost city of Gearzoo. This unprecedented discovery was made by researchers affiliated with the British Museum in the plains of Iraq. The city itself dates back an estimated 5,000 years to the birth of civilization. It was the ancient Sumerians who built the city, those early humans who have been credited with inventing writing and law and order. The Sumerians also made some major accomplishments in art, science, architecture, and so much more. They were some of the first humans that we know about to begin gathering in cities in Mesopotamia. One of these first cities was named Gearzoo, a place straight out of a fairy tale. Nothing remains now except its ruins, but this was once a major center of Sumerian culture. It was a huge, shining city and the center of some of the most lucrative trade in the world. While other places on the globe still had people living in caves, Gearzoo was like a city built by the gods. Gearzoo was first discovered by French archaeologist Ernest de Sarzac in 1877. He and his team were able to excavate thousands of ancient cuneiform tablets over a series of excavations. The tablets detail everything from the political structure of the city to its inhabitants' daily life. But most of the really important treasure had been pillaged years earlier. The city wasn't excavated again until much more recently. That was when archaeologists found the lost palace and its temple. All we really know right now is that the palace was home to the kings of the city, and the temple was most likely a sanctuary to the Mesopotamian god of war, Ningersuu. Number 9. Madinat Habu Temple. The Madinat Habu Temple in Egypt is a place straight out of legend. According to Egyptian mythology, this was the very place where the god Amun first appeared to humans. It was so important in the Egyptian belief system that two major pharaohs, Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, built temples to Amun. Later, Ramses III himself, one of the greatest rulers Egypt ever saw, built an even bigger memorial temple at the same site. The temple built by Ramses grew to be much more than a simple place of worship. The temple complex was enormous and soon found itself surrounded by heavily fortified walls. There was a gateway at the eastern end of the temple, likely protected by soldiers day and night. Ramses himself resided here every now and again, as is evident by the ruins of a royal palace at the southern end of the temple. There were also priests and other important people who lived full-time inside the temple's walls. Archaeologists have even revealed a canal that was connected directly to the Nile, meaning people could maneuver their boats from the Great River and straight into the temple. That access point is long gone, though. The climate has changed a lot since the days of Ramses, 3,100 years ago, and the canal has been filled with desert sand. And now for number 8. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Dano's Music, Low-Key Dope, and Michelle. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. We wouldn't be here without you. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. We'd love to have you. Number 8. Ha'amonga a Maui. One of the most beautifully magical places in the Pacific is on the island of Tonga Tapu. It's been called the Stonehenge of the Pacific, and for good reason. On this volcanic island are two standing stones known as a trilithon, with a small lintel stone on top. These stones create a mystical gate 17 feet tall, 19 feet wide, and made from solid coral limestone. It almost looks like the ruins of a stargate that could take you to the shores of another world. Each slab of stone weighs about 40 tons, way too much for ancient humans to have been able to lift. The structure is called the Ha'amonga a Maui, and it was built about 800 years ago. In the local language of the islanders, the name means Maui's burden. Local legend says these stones were brought by the god Maui himself, primeval ruler of the world. Even the ancestors of the people still living on the island understood that these stones were way too heavy for anyone to lift. With no other explanation for how the stones were carved and placed, they chalked it up to the work of a deity. Makes sense, right? Sadly, these stones are now sitting at a small nature reserve beside a road, and most people don't even know they exist. But now you do! As for what archaeologists say, the gateway was likely the portal to the royal palace. Not a magical portal, but an actual portal that people walked through on their way to King Heketa's great palace in the 13th century. However, that palace was destroyed long ago. Researchers have even suggested the Ha'amonga'a Maui may have had something to do with early astronomical practices. Why not? Everyone else was doing it. Number 7. The Red Taj. The Taj Mahal is not only one of the most legendary buildings in India, but also one of the most romantic. It was built by Shah Jahan of the Mughal Empire in 1631 for his deceased wife Mumtaz Mahal. But little do many travelers to India realize there is another great building that was constructed in the name of love. It's called the Red Taj, located in Agra. It may not be as visually impressive as the Taj Mahal, but it still looks like something straight from a fairy tale. The Red Taj was built by a grieving wife in memory of her beloved. The story takes us back to the end of the 18th century. John Hessing was a Dutch traveler who became an army officer and served in Agra. He was a loyal and dedicated soldier, and so he was given command of the Agra fortress in 1799. When the fort was attacked by the British in 1803, he was killed in battle trying to defend it. His wife, Anne Hessing, was so devastated by the loss of her husband that she commissioned the Red Taj in his memory. She had it designed to look exactly like the Taj Mahal, but to be built out of pure red sandstone. It's almost an exact replica of the Taj Mahal, only it's a tomb for a Dutchman. Number 6. Villa of Livia. The Villa of Livia is one of the most impressively preserved Roman villas anywhere in Europe. It's an ancient structure about 7 miles from Rome with a history going back 2,040 years. Walking through the preserved halls of the villa is like walking through a Roman dream. It's believed the villa was given to Livia Drusilla as part of her dowry when she married the very first Roman emperor in history. This was none other than Caesar Augustus, aka Octavian, the heir to Julius Caesar. He was the first ruler of Rome as an empire instead of a republic between 27 BC and 14 AD. He was technically the founder of the Roman Principate, which came directly before the Roman Empire. He is considered by many historians to be the greatest leader in human history. When archaeologists discovered a marble statue of Caesar Augustus inside Villa of Livia in 1863, it was immediately given to the Vatican and has been kept in their private museum ever since. As you can imagine, the villa given to the wife of the first ruler in the Roman Empire's history was spectacular. The interior was painted in garden scenes, making it seem as though the empress was walking through a serene and sunny landscape, even on the gloomiest of days. The villa was also just generally massive and an impressive piece of early Roman architecture. It's also a great example of just how obscenely wealthy the Roman elite were. If you need any decorating ideas, just check out ancient Roman villas. Number 5. Hohen-Salzburg Fortress. The Hohen-Salzburg Fortress in Austria, also called the High Salzburg Fortress, is the true image of a fairy tale castle. It's the city's most famous landmark, and it broods over the medieval town from its position high atop a hill. The white stone walls are starting to fade. The castle looks like a place where you would expect a legion of vampires to be hiding out in the dungeon. And it's honestly a bit of a surprise that it's still standing. The castle has been on the hill overlooking Salzburg Old Town Quarter for about 900 years. So of course, it's gone through some changes. In 1077, Archbishop Gebhard commissioned a fortress to be built on the hill. When it was done, the fortress was nothing more than a weak wooden wall and a simple bailey. But expansions continued, especially since there was an ongoing conflict between King Henry IV of Germany, who was also the Holy Roman Emperor, and the archbishops residing in Salzburg. They wanted to protect themselves from the vengeful king, and so they added as many fortifications as they could. The archbishops survived the brutality of King Henry, then used the fortress again during the Hungarian War and Peasants' War, which occurred in the 15th and 16th centuries, respectively. These 2 centuries saw the castle improved even more. What you see today is the result of over 600 years of continuous construction. But as the medieval days came to a close, a stone-walled fortress became obsolete and unnecessary. Today, the High Salzburg Fortress is a living museum. Would you like to visit, or have you already? Let us all know in the comments below. Number 4. The Coral Castle. The Coral Castle is not ancient, but it does look like it belongs in a fairy tale. The Coral Castle is one of the most fascinating places in Miami, built by a single man over the span of about 28 years. The castle is complete with mind-bending sculptures, a lush garden, but surprisingly no turrets or ramparts. Edward Leedskalnin was 31 years old when he moved to Florida City in 1919. Days before his wedding in his native country of Latvia, his wife abandoned him. He spent about 18 years depressed because he was left by his fiancée. Then he purchased a small plot of land about 10 miles from the city and started to build Coral Castle. Edward spent the next 3 decades sculpting something that looks like it belongs in Alice in Wonderland. What's really crazy is that nobody's entirely sure how Edward built his masterpiece. He was only about 5 feet tall, weighed under 100 pounds, and yet managed to mold 3 million pounds of light coral by himself. He didn't use any modern mechanical instruments, and nobody helped him. He used nothing but his hands and primitive tools. Many people compared the bizarre, mysterious construction of Coral Castle to the construction of Stonehenge or the Egyptian pyramids. What do you think? Number 3. Gaziantep Castle. In the early hours of February 6, 2023, disaster struck the nation of Turkey. Both Turkey and Syria were hit with a monumental earthquake. It was a tragedy that saw many lives lost, many buildings destroyed, and one particular historic relic obliterated. The legendary Gaziantep Castle, a majestic stronghold with tall walls that stood strong for over 1,500 years, fell into pieces. The 7.8 magnitude earthquake caused the castle to collapse. It crumbled under its own weight with such force that big chunks of debris were found far away on the road. Iron railings were discovered on the sidewalks, the retaining wall was reduced to rubble, and some of the bastions were completely annihilated. The castle also took out the historical Sirvani Mosque behind it, which was built in the 17th century. Gaziantep Castle began as a watchtower during the 2nd century AD. According to Turkish museums, the fortress was then expanded by Emperor Justinian after the Roman Empire fell, and the Eastern Roman Empire came into power. Justinian was the great ruler of the empire between 527 and 565 AD. Even throughout all the conflicts that raged in Turkey over the centuries, the castle was never destroyed. Now it's nothing but a pile of dust. Number 2. Thornborough Hinges. The Thornborough Hinges in England do not look very exciting. The entire archaeological complex consists of 3 circular hinges built about 4,500 years ago. They are currently in the middle of some farmland, not very easily accessible. The only way to reach the hinges is to wander through wide open fields, and even then you might miss them. The hinges look like raised humps, hardly even hills. You could walk from one end to the other and not even realize you just traversed thousands of years of ancient history. Yet back when the Thornborough Hinges were created, they were megalithic monuments. This small section of English farmland in North Yorkshire once looked very different. When the hinges were erected, this was a Neolithic ritual landscape. There were huge earthen banks and gigantic stones where people all across the land gathered. And here, under the primeval sky and before their huge stone circles, the ancient people conducted unknown magical ceremonies. This was a place straight out of a druid fairy tale, or a tale from the days of King Arthur. Archaeologists have even referred to the Thornborough Hinges as the Stonehenge of the North. Fun fact, the Thornborough Hinges were used, according to the official information from English Heritage, for 2,000 consecutive years. To put that into perspective, people were using this ritual landscape for the same amount of time that has elapsed since the birth of the Roman Empire. Number 1. The Castello de Salgado. In the Portuguese city of Lisbon, Castello de Salgado stands as a monumental piece of history. It's a fairy tale castle that has seen a lot more than the Middle Ages. This thing was around during the end of the Roman Empire. It saw the rise of the Visigoths in Western Europe, and it witnessed centuries of conflict between the Arabs and the Christians. The castle survived multiple sieges, saw Portugal be birthed as a nation, and inspired kings and seafarers during the age of colonialism. In the 1940s, the castle received a major restoration work and has been a tourist attraction ever since. The watchtowers were embellished, the ramparts were built, and the courtyards were restored to their original glory. Most castles in Europe were built starting around the 9th century AD. Castello de Salgado is fantastic because it was established as a fortress by the Romans in 200 BC. This is a rarity in the world of European castles. Sadly, though, it went from being an important military stronghold to being used as a prison in the 16th century. Then it was abandoned for 200 years after an earthquake damaged it in 1755. Thanks for watching! Which of these magical ancient places captured your imagination the most? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!